What's up, guys? Welcome to Newswave. Hope you had a good weekend this weekend. Got to play some games and everything. Maybe spend some time out of the house. But there's a bunch of stuff that, of course, happened over the weekend here on the channel. If you missed it, go back, take a look. We played the Prey demo that just came out. That's in no way linked to the other Prey game, which is kind of a shame to like that one. We also talked about the 2DS XL on our podcast, which is now up on SoundCloud, by the way. Stay tuned to the channel to see any snippets and stuff of video from that as that will be posted. Then, of course, talked about the PS4 and the PS2, kind of battling it out now and seeing if the PS4 can catch up. But with that, guys, let's get started for today. The first story today to talk about is the Nintendo Switch and Mario Kart 8 with sales. Now, so far we've seen Mario Kart 8 climb to the top of the Amazon selling list. Keep in mind, though, that is just Amazon. That does not mean that Mario Kart 8 is outselling like Zelda or anything like that. It just means that on Amazon right now it is selling better, yes. But there are, of course, other places you can buy games. But overall, the biggest one, though, comes from GameStop, where they're talking about how Switches are selling out in hours. Not days, hours. In fact, when asked over at GameStop, Eric Bright, who's one of their senior directors of merchandising, so they go in and, of course, they evaluate how demand is with different items and stuff that they stock in stores and evaluate if it needs to be there or not. And I'm sure he has his hands full right now with the Switch, mostly just trying to get them. But in an interview, he said, "It's exceeding our expectations. We knew it would be a high-demand product, but our Switch allocations are selling out not in days, but in hours. The demand is so high that consumers have to react quickly to be able to get their hands on them. Right now, we're not seeing sales going down at all, and I would expect that to continue for quite some time." And realistically, if the Switch sales were doing as well as they were before Mario Kart, they're only going to do better and better. Now, I did check around when Mario Kart 8 was coming out, because I went ahead and took a drive out that morning to get it, because my local GameStop opened at 9, and they had a few. I think they said they had like 7 or 8 Switches. They were just there and available. I did get there close to open, though, so realistically, some people probably picked them up throughout the day, or maybe even after I left, because they opened at 9 and I got there at like 9:10. So realistically, they probably did sell through those. I haven't been back there to check, but based on what we're seeing at Best Buys, who did get a pretty healthy allotment of from what we're hearing online, they're just selling out. It's just the demand for the product is high. Nintendo is not shorting allocation, as we're seeing with numbers. 2.74 million in March is higher than expected. If they get over 4 million through April, which will be very interesting to see, then certainly no allocation is being, I guess, constricted. You're not getting that, you know? And it's interesting to see that people still have that perception right now when Switches are actually getting in stock. It's just the demand is high. Everyone's lining up to get them. The interesting thing is, though, in May, there's nothing groundbreaking and like big blockbuster game coming out. I mean, you kind of lump Mario Kart into that, because it came out at the end of April, right? So realistically, you can kind of get away with that and say, oh, that's kind of like a May release. People in May will be buying it as they find Switches. And yeah, that's probably a thing, but there's nothing major. I know like there's like Minecraft and NBA Playgrounds, but there's nothing like big. There's not another Mario Kart, is what I'm trying to say, in May. And then, of course, we have to wait till ARMS, then Splatoon 2, which is very popular in Japan. And then from there, we'll have already seen E3, and then more announcements will probably be happening. So it's going to be interesting for the next couple months. I really want to see what happens in May, because that has been Nintendo's kind of weak point with something like the Wii U, where it really fell off in the third month. Very interesting to see. They're very fortunate to have Mario Kart, and we'll just have to see what happens from here. And real quick, if you missed it, they did find what was in this impossible chest in Breath of the Wild. So just in case you were completely uninformed on this, there was a chest in Breath of the Wild that was pretty much impossible to get out of the ocean. It was buried deep in there. It did not work with the magnetic. You could not pull it out of there or anything, and of course they couldn't open it underwater. Well, people who are using the emulator right now, Semu or Semu, whatever you want to call it, they figured it out, because they can use an emulator to do some tricks, like remove the water, for example, and then go down there and open it, fall into the floor a little bit, open it, and the prize wasn't really worth it. So what happened was they opened the chest, and it was just opal. Yeah, that's right. I'm not really sure I don't think anyone really knows what the point of that chest was in the first place, why it was buried underwater. Maybe it was just there as a decoration piece, but they still had to give it a mechanic to open. One, because of time constraints, they just said, hey, just put a chest in there, put opal in there so it has an item inside, because I guess they can't leave like nothing in there. Otherwise it might damage the game, or there might be a game-breaking bug if you actually do open it. But they just put opal in it. So I think it was just, like I said, decoration piece. It's pretty funny that we figured out how to open it. It's very underwhelming what they found. But like I said, there's a chance we probably weren't even supposed to open the chest. So they had to put some in there, we get Opal. So here's a really cool piece of news. If you were completely unaware of Battlefield, maybe you didn't play Battlefield 4 or even Battlefield 1, the biggest thing about Battlefield 4, though, is there are some very crazy, very convoluted Easter eggs. Stuff you have to go through a crazy amount of steps, super cryptic. From what I could tell, different developers put their own Easter eggs in there, and it was really set up to be something where a community would work together to figure out. And it's crazy. They have things like dinosaurs, UFOs and aliens, and even a megalodon that jumps out of the ocean over an island. Yes, this all happens in Battlefield 4 on their multiplayer maps. It's really crazy. Well, it looks like the first real Easter egg in Battlefield 1 has been found, and it's Megalodon. And it's not anywhere you would expect it to be. It's like in a puddle. You have to go through a bunch of steps like you had to in Battlefield 4, and then out of nowhere, Megalodon kind of shoots up out of the puddle and then drops back down from what we could tell. And it's, again, these Easter eggs are very interesting because there's a lot of steps involved, and realistically, in Battlefield 1, there's probably quite a few of them hiding in there. I mean, it's down to like where there might be a Yeti in the mountains way off in the distance that you could find with binoculars. This is, again, in Battlefield 4, and it doesn't do anything. It's just, there's a little blip on the radar that's out there. So they spent a lot of time, and it's really funny to think about Battlefield 4 this way because they had this kind of time to put these very crazy, very insane and out there Easter eggs, stuff you have to do all these like Da Vinci Code steps to do, but the game was super broken when it came out. So you figure maybe they spend a little more time working on the game and less time programming Easter eggs for it to work. But of course, the game eventually worked and you could play it, but it took quite a while if you remember that whole debacle. So I enjoy these Easter eggs though. It's very cool. I mean, Megalodon in Battlefield 1 is weird as it is, so why not? It's kind of funny to see. So along with their reports, their quarterly reports that they have to put out, of course, for fiscal years and everything, Nintendo also talked about their demographics. This is information they've collected from people who are using the Nintendo Switch through surveys or online surveys, things like that, and they came up with a bunch of interesting demographics from age and even gender. Now, the graphs you're going to see here are pretty interesting. You'll see one pretty much shows the age distribution, all the way down from 12 and under, all the way up to 45 and up, and it's interesting to note that it looks like the Switch audience is older, I think, than Nintendo originally thought. I mean, the Switch is already kind of marketed towards more adults than kids, and this graph shows that. I mean, it really does. It shows the disparity there between the younger audience really probably latching onto the 3DS and the 2DS more, and then the older audience really latching onto the Switch more. I mean, you can see right away that most of the chart from really 23% all the way up to 45 and up, I mean, that's the entire market that usually spends money on games without having to ask their parents for money, and that makes up most of the chart. So Nintendo has the Switch at least selling right now to the correct audience. This is the audience that will come back to them and give them money without, again, having to ask permission or saving up allowance or anything like that. I mean, most people, obviously over the age of 18 and up, can at least have the option of getting a job and working to get games, whereas if you're under 18, it might be a little harder to get a job, and then you have to rely on your parents to buy you something that they probably feel you don't need. So at least I can understand that. The other really interesting demographic below that is the male to female ratio. It does show that there is a 90% male ratio as opposed to 10% female. And I was going to ask you guys about that in like a poll or something, but then I looked at the demographics for this channel, and maybe not, because it looks like most of you guys are males as well. So I'm not really sure if Nintendo thought it was going to go the other way, where it would be like, I don't know, 70-30 or something, but it is a predominantly male user base for the Switch right now. And again, these are early adopters. These things could change as we go forward, especially after we get past the first Christmas that happens in the holiday seasons, where people are buying Switches for other people, not necessarily themselves. Oh boy, here we go, guys. The next bit of news is interesting. So we all know at this point, if you've been following the Switch up to its release, who Emily Rogers is. Her and Laura Kate Dale really put out a lot of rumors. Some were correct, some were not, and they're sticking heavily to the Mario Raving Rabbids crossover, like heavily to it. This is something that, if they're going to show it, it's going to be at E3. And Emily Rogers had a question asked to her about this, just a little more information, I guess, and she gave us more information on it. This was posted over on her blog, which is like a WordPress blog that she has, and the question presented to her was, can you give us more info on the Rabbids game? To which she replied, I'll throw you guys one last bone. Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle has 8 playable characters, including Mario, Luigi, Peach, and Yoshi, and they each have their own sci-fi weapons, laser guns, arm cannons, etc., but you don't control the characters, you control Tutorio, a small floating dish to guide them through the worlds. This is also co-op multiplayer. That sounds crazy, right? That sounds really out there, I think, but if they were going to do something with Ubisoft to be different from normal Mario games, Nintendo would try to be as different as possible. This sounds a little crazy, though. I mean, yes, it does seem within the realm of possibility, something like sci-fi weapons with Mario. I mean, we're talking about Mario having a gun, running around with a gun of some kind, which will look pretty funny if they actually do that. Of course, they will probably keep it comical and lighthearted, so it won't be like he's walking around with an AK-47 or something. But still, it sounds crazy. It also sounds interesting that she's saying we won't control them like physically, like we won't actually control them ourselves. We will be controlling them with something else. I assume they follow or run around with or something. It's hard to really say what she's talking about. You control a floating dish that guides them, so you indirectly control them is what it sounds like. I don't know if I would like that. Again, I would like to see a little more about this game, if it even exists, because we don't really know yet. But I would like to see a little more. Apparently, it's cool that there's going to be co-op multiplayer. Also, interesting idea. I guess you would both control a different flying disc and work together for different things. That is probably the most plausible thing out of this paragraph, mostly because the Switch has done nothing but try to create couch co-op friendly games. And I appreciate that personally, because it's a lot more fun to play a game with someone who is next to you rather than play with somebody who's online at their house. But I'm cautiously optimistic about this. Optimistic in the sense that it is a different, unique idea. But I'm cautious in the fact that it's still rumored and we still don't hear anything about this from Nintendo themselves. Keep in mind, they also did say that Mother 3 is coming, and I'm still waiting for that. So cautious optimism here, people. Oh, and a quick update on that. Remember how we talked about that Breath of the NES game that we showed a few days ago, last week? We talked about it, how it was kind of a game that a fan was creating to kind of mimic the idea that was brought to GDC, where they kind of made a game that was 2D, 3D out of the original Zelda game, and they went through that to come up with ideas. And of course, a person by the name of Winter Drake decided to take it upon themselves to create this game. Well, like we all thought was going to happen, as soon as the spotlight was put on the game, Nintendo fires back with a cease and desist. And Winter Drake posted this on his Twitter account. He said, "Looks like Nintendo America wasn't a big fan of Breath of the NES." And underneath of that is the official cease and desist order from an attorney that is representing Nintendo. So that game is being pulled down. I hope you managed to get a copy for yourself, because it was free. It appears that Winter Drake is going to remap the entire thing. It won't be Zelda, but it'll still be in the same idea. It just won't use any of the characters or names and everything. That's at least what they're saying now. I'm not sure how interesting it'll be for them to do it without Zelda, because that was really a driving force for them from what their blogs and everything were saying. But again, this is Nintendo's right. Their properties are being used by another person. I don't know, it's not fun to watch, obviously, because it could have been really cool to see this game, because it's more than likely Nintendo's not going to bring it out on the eShop or anything. But what can you do? It's not your property. The last bit of news is, it's pretty interesting. So we all know Phil Spencer at this point, right? Head of Xbox. He's trying to really bring that brand back around after really falling off at the beginning of the Xbox One's life. And he had some interesting things to say in an interview about Zelda and Horizon Zero Dawn. Specifically, he talked about how he doesn't believe they're making a big impact in the single-player world for games. And really, when he said that in an interview, he got kind of attacked by a lot of people on Twitter, to which he had to come out and kind of put the flames out and explain what he's trying to say. So what he originally said, the quote that he originally said was, "The audience for those big story-driven games, I won't say it isn't as large, but they're not as consistent. You'll have things like Zelda or Horizon Zero Dawn that'll come out, and they'll do really well, but they don't have the same impact that they used to have, because the big service-based games are capturing such a large amount of the audience. Sony's first-party studios do a lot of these games, and they're good at them, but outside of that, it's difficult. They're become more rare. It's a difficult business decision for those teams. You're fighting into more headwind." So after all of this, he goes out on Twitter and kind of explains what he means here. And I'm going to talk to you guys very quickly about what he's trying to say. So what's happening here is a lot of the people, developers especially, investors, people who deal with a lot of the money behind the scenes, because of course we see the games, they see the money in the back end. They're realizing that things like Destiny, that has what seems to be an unlimited supply of DLC and special editions to sell us, make more money. They seem to, right? If you release a game like a Horizon Zero Dawn and it doesn't have 4 pieces of DLC attached to it, you get that initial purchase, no matter how many you sell, and that's it. And what he's trying to say is these service-based games where there is a constant flood of season passes, DLC, microtransactions, I mean, what is it? FIFA Ultimate Team is massive in Europe where people are just spending so much money on it. And it's crazy, but that seems to be the way the market is going because they can sustain what has become an obscenely expensive practice to build some of these games. I mean, didn't we see Destiny cost like $500 million? Something crazy, right? Now, I will say most of that ends up being marketing. You end up spending probably 60 to 70% in marketing, which is crazy. If like a game takes $50 million to produce, you spend $150 million on marketing, which sounds insane, but that's the way it is. It's expensive to market stuff, whether it's on YouTube or commercials, really. Commercials are the big thing. And at that point, what he's trying to say is it's hard for developers and studios to take a chance on a single-player game like a Horizon Zero Dawn, for example, that had no prior history. A lot easier to take a chance on Zelda, for example, because you know it's going to sell if you put the time in, which they did, obviously. But, man, big ups to them with developing and putting out Horizon Zero Dawn, because I have a feeling there was a point in time in that boardroom where they were looking at the boards and saying, this better work, because if not, we are in a massive hole and we probably will not make another game for Sony, because they won't want us to. So I think what Phil is trying to say here, Phil Spencer, is expect more DLC than now. Expect more service stuff. Expect more microtransactions. I would assume the microtransactions will be more optional stuff, but don't be surprised if you start seeing more, because it makes more financial sense with how expensive games are getting, that they need more than their $60 price tag. They just do. And I don't think they want to raise it to 70 on us because we complain about 60 now. We're just going to complain about 70 then. So I get that they want to attach things to them to give them something they can sell, because if they sell you 1 million copies of this game, maybe they can sell you 1 million copies of the DLC, and then they get more money. So it's tough, but that's what he's trying to say right now. It's interesting. He worded it incorrectly, and people attacked him for it, but that's what he was trying to say. And that's it for Newswave today, guys. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me think about anything we talked about today, whether it's the Phil Spencer thing, where he's talking about how games are just a little too expensive to make, and we got to kind of make them into more like $80 to $100 games with our DLC and services, or in Destiny's case, probably like $200 items. Let me know what you think about Mario Kart and the Switch just outselling constantly. It's out there right now. It's selling off shelves all day long. It's pretty much impossible to keep in stock at this point, mostly because of demand. So for now, guys, I will see you next time.